My daughter-in-law told me I'm the mother now, as I laid flowers on my son's grave. Then she found out I had secrets too. The rain fell steadily, soaking the fresh soil of David's grave. 3 months since the accident, yet the pain remained, as sharp as the day I got that terrible call. I knelt on the damp ground, arranging white lilies, his favorites, against the temporary headstone. I thought I'd find you here. Rebecca's voice came from behind me. My daughter-in-law stood with her black umbrella tilted against the wind, blonde hair perfectly styled despite the weather. "Hello, Rebecca," I said without looking up. "I come every Thursday." "I know. That's why I'm here. We need to talk, Margaret." Something in her tone made me turn. Before we continue, comment where you're watching from and subscribe to the channel. We'd love to see how far our stories are reaching. Her face held that familiar expression, determination mixed with contempt that had only appeared after David's funeral. Before, she'd always pretended warmth when he was alive. I stood slowly, my joints protesting. At 65, I wasn't as nimble anymore, but I had my dignity. I brushed mud from my pants and faced her. "What do you want to talk about?" Rebecca's eyes narrowed. "It's about the children. I don't think your visits are good for them anymore." My heart constricted. Emma, 8, and Liam, 5, were all I had left of my son. "What do you mean?" "The kids love when I take them for the weekend. That's the problem. They come back confused, asking questions about their father that I'm not ready for them to process. Emma had nightmares after your last visit. We just looked at photo albums," I defended. She asked about her father. I told her happy stories. Rebecca stepped closer, lowering her voice though we were alone. "You're undermining me, Margaret, making them question my decisions." "That's not true. I would never—" "I've decided it's best if we take a break from the visits," she interrupted. "The children need stability. They need to move forward, not be constantly reminded of what they've lost." The rain felt colder against my skin. "They've lost their father, Rebecca. They shouldn't forget him." Her face hardened. "I'm not saying they should forget him. I'm saying they need to adjust to their new reality, with me as their primary caregiver." I felt my breath catch. "I'm their grandmother. I have every right to see them." That's when she said it. Words that would haunt me for months. "I'm the mother now, Margaret. The only parent they have left. And it's time you understood that your role is secondary. It always has been." The cruelty shocked me more than the words themselves. This wasn't just about the children. This was about erasing me from their lives, about erasing David's memory. "They're all I have left of my son," I whispered. Rebecca adjusted her umbrella, unmoved. "Well, that's not my concern. My concern is what's best for my children. And right now, that means limiting your influence. You can't do this." "Actually, I can." Her smile never reached her eyes. "Unless you want to hire a lawyer and fight for visitation. But we both know you can't afford that on your teacher's pension. And who would the court favor? The grieving mother raising 2 small children, or the meddling grandmother who can't let go?" Her calculated threat left me speechless. How long had she been planning this? "The children will ask for me," I finally said. "I'll handle that," Rebecca replied dismissively. "Children are resilient. They'll adjust." She turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and Margaret, don't try to contact them directly. It will only make things harder for everyone." I stood frozen, watching her walk away, heels clicking confidently on the cemetery path. Once she was out of sight, my legs gave way, and I sank back down beside my son's grave. "What am I supposed to do now, David?" I whispered, tears mixing with rain. "She's taking everything." The drive home was a blur. My small ranch house, once filled with David's laughter when he was growing up, now seemed emptier than ever. I shuffled inside, dripping rainwater onto the worn mat, not bothering with lights. I made tea and carried it to the living room, where family photos covered every surface. David as a toddler, teenager, on his wedding day. David holding Emma when she was born. David teaching Liam to throw a ball. And Rebecca, always perfectly posed, always slightly separate, as if merely tolerating the family she'd married into. There had been signs, I realize now, how she would reschedule our family dinners at the last minute, how she gradually took over all holidays, moving them to her parents' home, the subtle comments suggesting my ways were outdated, that I didn't understand modern parenting. David had always mediated. "Mom, please try to understand," he would say. "Rebecca's just trying to establish our own family traditions." But now David was gone, and there was no one to mediate. The phone rang, cutting through silence. I answered, quickly, hope flaring. "Grandma?" Emma's small voice came through. "Emma, sweetheart," I said, relief washing over me. "How are you?" "I'm okay." She sounded hesitant. "Mom said I should call to tell you we can't come over this weekend." My heart sank. "Did she say why, honey?" "She said you're not feeling well and need rest." "Are you sick, Grandma?" The lie was so calculated it took my breath away. Rebecca was already creating a narrative where I was backing away. "I've just been a little tired," I said, not wanting to contradict her mother. "But I'm always happy to see you and Liam. Mom says we have to give you space to get better." Emma's voice lowered, and she said not to talk about Daddy so much because it makes you sad. I closed my eyes, fighting tears. "Talking about your daddy never makes me sad, Emma. I love remembering him. I have to go now," Emma said suddenly. "Mom's coming. I love you, Grandma." "I love you too, sweet." The line went dead before I could finish. I sat in silence, the empty teacup cold in my hands, as reality became clear. Rebecca wasn't just limiting my access. She was systematically removing me from their lives, rewriting the narrative to make me the problem, and I had no idea how to stop her. 2 weeks passed without a word from Rebecca or the children. I called twice, but each call went straight to voicemail. I even drove by their house once, embarrassed by my desperation, but the curtains were drawn and no one answered the door. I threw myself into cleaning, a futile attempt to keep busy. While sorting through old photographs, I found David's high school yearbook. I sat cross-legged on the carpet, turning pages until I found his senior portrait. His smile was so much like Emma's, the same dimple on the left cheek, the same crinkle around the eyes. "Oh, David," I whispered, tracing his face. "I'm trying, but she's making it so hard." The doorbell rang, startling me. My heart leaped. Maybe the children. I hurried to the door, smoothing my hair. It was Helen, my neighbor from across the street. "Margaret, do you have a minute?" Her expression was unusually serious. "Of course," I said, letting her in. "Is everything all right?" Helen sat at my kitchen table, fidgeting with her purse strap. "I'm not sure how to say this, but I thought you should know. Rebecca was at Carol's book club yesterday. Carol was another neighbor, someone I'd been friendly with for years." "Okay," I said slowly, not understanding why this warranted a special visit. Helen hesitated. "She was saying things, Margaret, about you." My stomach tightened. "What kind of things?" "She told everyone that you've been having episodes, that you've been calling her in the middle of the night, confused and agitated. She said you've been showing up at her house unannounced, demanding to see the children, and that she's worried about their safety when they're with you." The blood drained from my face. "That's absolutely not true. I've been respecting her wishes. I haven't even spoken to her since that day at the cemetery." Helen squeezed my hand. "I didn't believe it, Margaret. That's why I'm here." But Carol and some of the others, they seemed convinced. Rebecca was very persuasive, crying about how hard it's been, dealing with both grief and your deteriorating mental state, as she put it. I felt physically ill. Rebecca wasn't just keeping the children from me. She was destroying my reputation, isolating me from community support. "She's been telling everyone that the doctor suggested you might have early dementia," Helen continued reluctantly. "She said that's why she can't allow the children to be alone with you anymore." "Dementia?" I was incredulous. "I'm 65, not 95, and I've never been diagnosed with anything of the sort." "I know," Helen said. "That's why I thought you should know what she's saying. It didn't sound like the Margaret I've known for 15 years. After Helen left, I sat at my kitchen table, mind racing. This wasn't just about keeping the children away. Rebecca was systematically destroying my credibility, ensuring that if I tried to fight her, no one would believe me. My phone rang. It was my sister Anne. "Margaret, is everything okay?" she asked without preamble. "I just got the strangest call from Rebecca." My heart sank. "What did she say?" "She said she's concerned about you, that you've been having memory problems and confusion. She asked if I could come stay with you for a while, to keep an eye on you." "And you believed her?" I couldn't keep the hurt from my voice. "Of course not," Anne said firmly. "That's why I'm calling you directly. This doesn't sound like my sister. What's going on?" I poured everything out to Anne, the confrontation at the cemetery, the canceled visits, and now these rumors. When I finished, there was silence on the line. "This is deliberate," Anne finally said. "She's isolating you, Margaret, making sure no one will believe you if you try to fight for your grandchildren." "But why?" My voice broke. "David's gone. David's gone. Why can't we just grieve together? Why is she doing this?" "I don't know," Anne admitted, "but this isn't just grief speaking. This seems calculated." After our call, I couldn't sit still. I drove to the local park where I'd often taken Emma and Liam. Sitting on a bench, I watched children play, their laughter a painful reminder of what I'd lost. "Mrs. Foster?" I looked up to see Janet Miller, Emma's former kindergarten teacher. "Hello, Janet," I said, managing a smile. She hesitated before sitting beside me. "I heard about David. I'm so sorry." "Thank you," I said, the familiar ache blooming in my chest. Janet twisted her hands in her lap. "I also heard some other things, about you having some difficulties." The shame hit me like a physical blow. Rebecca's rumors had spread even here. "Whatever you heard isn't true," I said quietly. "Rebecca has been. Well, she's decided I shouldn't see my grandchildren anymore." Janet's eyes widened. "But why?" "Emma always lit up when she talked about her grandma. In fact," she paused, "that's part of why I was surprised by what I heard. It didn't match what I knew of your relationship with Emma." "What exactly did you hear?" I asked, dreading the answer. "That you'd become unstable after David's death. That you'd made the children upset by talking inappropriately about their father. That Emma was afraid of you." I closed my eyes, the cruelty of these lies overwhelming me. "None of that is true, Janet. I would never do anything to upset my grandchildren." Janet studied my face. "I believe you, Margaret. I've seen you with Emma. That child adores you." Her words were a small comfort, but they also highlighted the magnitude of what I was facing. If Rebecca was spreading these rumors throughout the community, how many others believed them? How many would take Rebecca's side if I tried to fight for visitation rights? That evening, I found myself pulled toward the boxes in my spare room where I'd stored David's things after the accident. I hadn't been able to go through them yet, the pain still too raw. But now, I needed to feel close to him somehow. The first box contained his college textbooks and papers. The second held sports memorabilia from high school. In the third, I found albums from his early married life with Rebecca. I hesitated before opening one. The photos showed a younger Rebecca and David, smiling on their honeymoon in Hawaii. They looked happy, in love. I turned the pages, watching their life unfold. Moving into their first house, Rebecca's baby shower for Emma, family holidays. Toward the end of the album, I noticed the changes. David's smile seemed less genuine. Rebecca stood slightly apart. In group photos, there was a tension visible even in still images. Had their marriage been in trouble? David had never said anything to me, but then he wouldn't have. He always protected the people he loved, sometimes at his own expense. I closed the album, unsettled by this new perspective. There was more to this situation than grief and control. Something had changed between David and Rebecca before his death. And somehow, I was paying the price for it now. I turned out the light but lay awake for hours, memories and questions swirling through my mind. Whatever game Rebecca was playing, I needed to understand the rules before I could fight back. And fight back I would. For Emma, for Liam, and for the memory of my son. A month after my confrontation with Rebecca, I was no closer to seeing my grandchildren. The isolation was becoming unbearable. My calls went unanswered, my texts ignored. I'd sent birthday cards to both Emma and Liam, but I had no way of knowing if they'd received them. The rumors about my mental state had spread throughout our small community. I noticed the pitying glances at the grocery store, the sudden silences when I entered the local diner. Former friends crossed the street to avoid awkward conversations. Rebecca had effectively turned me into a pariah. One rainy afternoon, I decided to tackle the attic. If I couldn't see my grandchildren, I could at least preserve David's memories for them. Maybe someday they'd want to know about their father, and I'd have everything organized. The attic was dusty and cramped, filled with boxes labeled in my neat handwriting: David, elementary, David, high school, David, college. I opened a box marked David, wedding, and found myself staring at photos from the rehearsal dinner. David looked handsome in his suit, his arm around Rebecca, who was stunning in a cream-colored dress. Behind a stack of photo albums, I found a shoebox I didn't recognize. It wasn't labeled in my handwriting. I opened it, expecting more wedding memorabilia. Instead, I found a stack of photographs I'd never seen before. They were from a beach trip, taken maybe 6 or 7 years ago. I recognized the location, Myrtle Beach, where David and Rebecca had gone with friends while I watched. Emma, who was just a toddler then, I flipped through the photos, freezing when I came to one that made my blood run cold. It showed Rebecca on the beach, her arms wrapped around a man who wasn't David. They were kissing, clearly not just a friendly peck. The man was tall with dark hair. In profile, he looked vaguely familiar. My hands trembled as I went through the rest of the photos. Rebecca and this man walking hand in hand along the shore, sitting close at a beachfront restaurant. Another kiss, this one even more intimate. I turned over one of the photos and found a date written in David's handwriting, along with a single word, why. Beneath the photos were printed emails, dozens of them, exchanged between Rebecca and someone named James. The dates spanned several months, ending abruptly around the time of the beach trip. The content was unmistakable. These weren't innocent messages between friends. I can't wait to see you again, one from James read. Being with you feels more real than my entire marriage. Rebecca's responses were equally explicit, filled with plans to meet and complaints about her life with David. He's so wrapped up in work and Emma, she wrote in one. Sometimes I feel like I made a mistake, settling down so young. When I'm with you, I remember who I was before all this responsibility. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped the box. How long had this affair been going on? Did David know? The date on the back of the photo and that single devastated question, why, suggested he'd discovered the truth, or at least suspected something. I sat back on my heels, trying to process this revelation. David had never said a word to me about marital problems. He'd always painted their relationship as solid, happy, but these photos and emails told a very different story. As I sorted through the rest of the box, a business card fell out. James Bennett, financial advisor. The name clicked into place. James had been the best man at David and Rebecca's wedding, David's college roommate and closest friend. I remembered him now. Tall, charming, always quick with a joke. He'd remained in their lives afterward, occasionally mentioned in conversation, present at birthday parties and holiday gatherings, until about 6 years ago, when he'd suddenly disappeared from their social circle. Now I understood why. At the bottom of the box, I found a letter in an unsealed envelope addressed to me in David's handwriting. With trembling fingers, I opened it. Mom, it began, if you're reading this, I've made a decision I couldn't bring myself to share while things were still unsettled. Rebecca has been having an affair with James for nearly a year. I found out during the Myrtle Beach trip. I've been trying to decide whether to fight for our marriage or end it. For Emma's sake, I want to try counseling first, but I'm not sure. Rebecca is willing. I need you to know this in case things get ugly. I know I can always count on you to be there for Emma, no matter what happens between me and Rebecca. Love, David. The letter was dated 3 weeks before his accident. I pressed the paper to my chest, a wave of grief and anger washing over me. David had been carrying this burden alone, trying to decide whether to save his marriage or end it. And then the accident had taken any choice away from him. Did Rebecca know about this box? Had she searched for these photos and emails after David's death? Was she afraid I might find them? Suddenly, her behavior made sense. This wasn't just about controlling access to the children. This was about erasing any possibility that I might discover her betrayal. If she could paint me as unstable and cut me out of the children's lives, she would never have to worry about me knowing the truth. Or worse, sharing it with Emma and Liam when they got older. I carefully returned everything to the box, my mind racing. This was powerful information, but I wasn't sure how or if I should use it. Exposing Rebecca's affair might give me leverage, but it could also hurt Emma and Liam. They'd already lost their father. Did they need to lose their image of their mother too? I carried the box downstairs and placed it on my kitchen table, staring at it as if it might provide answers. The rain tapped against the windows, a steady rhythm that matched my heartbeat. The doorbell rang, jolting me from my thoughts. I quickly shoved the box into a cabinet before answering. To my utter shock, James Bennett stood on my porch, older than in the photos but unmistakable. His expression was grim, uncomfortable. "Mrs. Foster," he said, shifting his weight. "I think we need to talk." I stared at James Bennett, momentarily speechless. The man from the photographs, David's former best friend and Rebecca's lover, was standing on my doorstep. "How did you find me?" I asked, my voice barely steady. "Small town," he said. May I come in? It's important. Every instinct told me to slam the door in his face. This man had betrayed my son. But curiosity won out. Why was he here now, after all this time? 5 minutes, I said, stepping aside. James entered cautiously, like someone approaching a wounded animal. He glanced around my living room, his eyes lingering on the photos of David and the children. I'm sorry about David, he said finally. He was a good man. Don't, I snapped. You don't get to mourn him, not after what you did. James flinched. So, you know. I just found out. The photos, the emails, David kept everything. He sank onto my couch, rubbing his hands over his face. He looked older than in the photos, tired. I assumed Rebecca had destroyed all evidence, he said. After David confronted her, she swore she had. David confronted her? This was new information. James nodded. About 6 years ago, that beach trip, he wasn't supposed to be there. Rebecca told him she was going with girlfriends. He surprised her, wanted to make a romantic weekend of it. 6 years ago. Emma would have been just 2. Liam wasn't even born yet. What happened? I asked, despite myself. He saw us together on the beach. He took photos, I guess, as evidence. Then he confronted Rebecca at the hotel. I wasn't there for that conversation, but she called me afterward, hysterical. Said David was threatening divorce, custody battles, everything. But they stayed together, I said, remembering the timeline. They even had Liam after that. James shrugged. Rebecca can be very persuasive. She convinced David it was a one-time mistake, swore it was over between us. They went to counseling. She got pregnant with Liam not long after. The calculated nature of it made me sick. But it wasn't really over between you two, was it? James had the decency to look ashamed. It was for a while, almost 3 years. Then, about 6 months before David's accident, Rebecca contacted me again. I stood up, unable to sit still. Why are you telling me this? Why now? Because Rebecca is lying to you, Mrs. Foster, and to everyone else. He leaned forward, his expression earnest. I'm not proud of my history with Rebecca, but I need you to know something. David wasn't planning to try again with her. Not this time. I froze. What do you mean? 3 weeks before his accident, David called me. He said he'd found new evidence that Rebecca was unfaithful again. Not with me, with someone else. He said he was done, that he was filing for divorce and seeking primary custody of the kids. The letter I'd found was dated exactly 3 weeks before the accident. David had written that he was still deciding, but according to James, he'd already made his choice. I don't believe you, I said, though part of me wondered. James pulled out his phone, tapped the screen a few times, and handed it to me. His last text to me. I read the message, dated 3 days before the accident. Meeting with lawyer tomorrow. Decision made. Need to protect the kids from her instability. We'll call you after. Why would he text you about this? I asked suspiciously. Because despite everything, I was still his oldest friend. And because I knew Rebecca better than most. He wanted insight on how she might react, what she might do. I handed the phone back, my mind spinning. Did David ever meet with the lawyer? Yes. The appointment was the day before the accident. A cold dread settled in my stomach. Are you suggesting? I'm not suggesting anything, Mrs. Foster. I'm just telling you what I know. David was planning to leave Rebecca and seek custody of the children. The next day, he died in a single-car accident on a road he'd driven hundreds of times. I sank back onto the couch, feeling suddenly lightheaded. That's a serious implication. It's just information, James said carefully. Make of it what you will. But there's something else you should know. Rebecca is selling David's life insurance policy. What? She can't do that. It's meant for the children's future. She can if she's the beneficiary. And she is. He hesitated. There's more. She's planning to move to Arizona with the kids. Fresh start, she says. Arizona, across the country. If Rebecca moved the children there, I'd never see them. How do you know all this? I asked, suspicious again. James looked uncomfortable. Because she contacted me last month. Wanted to reconnect now that enough time had passed since David's death. And you're what? Seeing her again? I couldn't keep the disgust from my voice. No, he said firmly. I've made a lot of mistakes, Mrs. Foster, but I've learned from them. I agreed to meet her once just to find out what she wanted. That's when she told me about the insurance money and her plans to move. She seemed to think I'd be interested in rekindling things. Why are you really here, James? I asked, suddenly, tired. Guilty conscience? He was quiet for a moment, partly, but mostly because David loved those kids more than anything, and he trusted you. He told me once that if anything ever happened to him, he knew his children would be okay because they had you. The words pierced my heart. Rebecca is going to leave with those children, James continued. Unless someone stops her. She's methodically cutting you out of their lives because you're the only real threat to her plans. You're the only one who truly knew David, the only one who might question her narrative. Even if everything you're saying is true, I said slowly, what can I do? She's their mother. She's convinced everyone I'm unstable. Who would believe me? I would testify, James said. About the affair, about David's plans for divorce. It might not be enough, but it's something. I stood up, walked to the window, and stared out at the rain-soaked street. Could I trust James Bennett, the man who had betrayed my son? But his story aligned with the evidence I'd found, with Rebecca's bizarre behavior since David's death. I need time to think, I said finally. James nodded, standing to leave. He placed a business card on the coffee table. My new number. Call me when you decide what to do. As he reached the door, he paused. One more thing. David kept a detailed journal. He mentioned it during our last conversation. Said he'd been documenting everything for months as advised by his lawyer, if you could find that journal. After James left, I sat motionless, trying to process everything I'd learned. Rebecca's affair. David's plans for divorce. The suspicious timing of his accident. The children being taken to Arizona. I glanced at the cabinet where I'd hidden the box of evidence. There was no journal there. I would have noticed it. Where would David have kept something so important? Something he wouldn't want Rebecca to find? The answer came to me suddenly. David had a small fireproof safe in his home office. He'd shown it to me once, joking that it was where he kept all the family secrets. If the journal existed, that's where it would be. In Rebecca's house? I had to get into that house. I had to find that journal. And I had to do it before Rebecca moved my grandchildren across the country, away from everything and everyone they'd ever known. I spent the next day wrestling with what James had told me. Part of me wanted to drive straight to Rebecca's house and confront her with everything I knew, but that approach would only push her further away, and possibly straight to Arizona with my grandchildren. No, I needed a plan. A careful, deliberate strategy. First, I called Anne. I told her everything. The photos, the emails, James's visit, and the journal that might be in David's safe. Margaret, you need to be extremely careful, Anne warned. If even half of what James said is true, Rebecca is more dangerous than we thought. I need to get into that house, I said. I need to find that journal. And how exactly do you plan to do that? Break in? I hadn't thought that far ahead. I don't know yet, but there has to be a way. What about legal options? Anne suggested. Grandparents' rights? I'd already researched this. Without evidence of harm to the children, it's nearly impossible. Courts heavily favor parents, especially mothers. And with Rebecca spreading rumors about my mental state, no judge would side with me. Then you need that journal, Anne agreed. But Margaret, promise me you won't do anything reckless. After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table with a notepad, thinking strategically for the first time since this nightmare began. I couldn't outmuscle Rebecca, but maybe I could outsmart her. I made a list of people who might help me. Helen, my supportive neighbor. Janet, Emma's former teacher. Pastor Robert from my church, who had known David since he was a boy. Small allies, but potentially powerful ones. Then I made a list of what I knew about Rebecca's routines. Before our estrangement, I'd often watched the children while she attended a weekly yoga class. She also had monthly hair appointments at an expensive salon in the next town over. If those routines still held, they might provide opportunities. Finally, I considered what might still give me access to the house. I'd never returned my spare key after David's death. Rebecca had probably changed the locks, but it was worth checking. Just as I was finishing my notes, my phone rang. An unfamiliar number. Hello? I answered cautiously. Grandma? A small voice whispered. It's Emma. My heart leaped. Emma? Sweetheart, I've missed you so much. I miss you too, she said, her voice barely audible. I'm using my friend Zoe's mom's phone. Mom took mine away. Why did she take your phone? Because I kept asking to see you. She got really mad. Emma's voice quavered. Grandma, we're moving away. Mom says we're going to Arizona next month. She says you're not coming with us. The confirmation of James's information hit me like a physical blow. Emma, listen to me. I don't want you to get in trouble. Is your mom nearby? No, I'm at Zoe's house for a play date. Her mom went to get snacks. Emma's voice dropped even lower. Grandma, I found something weird in Dad's office. Mom told us never to go in there, but I was looking for a photo of Dad for a school project. I sat up straighter. What did you find? Emma? A little book. It looks like Dad's handwriting. I only read a little bit before I got scared. It said Mom was doing bad things, that she was lying about stuff. My pulse quickened. The journal. Emma, where is this book now? I put it back where I found it, in Dad's desk drawer. I was afraid Mom would catch me. You did the right thing, sweetheart, I assured her. Listen, I want to see you and Liam very much, but I don't want to cause trouble with your mom, right? Now, can you tell me something? Does your house still have the same locks as when your dad was alive? I think so, Emma said, sounding confused. The front door sticks the same way. That was promising. If Rebecca hadn't changed the locks, my spare key might still work. Emma, I have to go now, but I want you to know how much I love you and Liam. I'm going to fix this, I promise. Mom says you're sick, Emma blurted out, that you're forgetting things and making up stories, but you don't sound sick. I'm not sick, Emma. I'm perfectly fine. I kept my voice gentle. Sometimes adults disagree about things, but it doesn't mean anyone is sick. That's what I thought, she said, sounding relieved. Oh, I think Zoe's mom is coming back. I have to go. I love you, Grandma. I love you too, sweetheart. More than anything. After we hung up, I sat motionless, my heart racing. Emma had found the journal. It was in David's desk drawer. And the locks might not have been changed. I knew what I had to do, but I needed help. I called Helen first. I need a favor, I said. It's about the children. Next, I called Pastor Robert. His calm, steady voice was reassuring as I explained the situation, not everything, just enough for him to understand the stakes. Margaret, I've been concerned, he admitted. Rebecca's story never quite rang true to me. David spoke so highly of you, always. The sudden claims about your mental health seemed convenient. I need to get evidence, Pastor. Evidence that will help me maintain a relationship with my grandchildren. I understand, he said, his tone grave. What can I do? I explained my plan. It wasn't perfect, but it was the best I could devise on short notice. The next day, I waited in Helen's car a block from Rebecca's house. We'd confirmed through the church secretary that Rebecca still attended her Thursday yoga class from 6 to 7 p.m. At 6:15, I approached the house. The neighborhood was quiet, most families inside for dinner. With trembling hands, I tried my key in the front door. It worked. I slipped inside, heart pounding. The house smelled the same. A faint hint of Rebecca's expensive perfume mixed with the scented candles she always burned. Family photos lined the entryway, including several of David with the children, none with me. I moved quickly to David's office. Rebecca had left it largely untouched, perhaps out of respect, perhaps out of indifference. David's desk stood against the far wall, neat and organized as always. I opened the top drawer. Nothing unusual. Pens, paper clips, a stapler. The second drawer contained file folders labeled with household accounts. The third drawer was locked. Emma had said the journal was in the desk drawer, but she hadn't specified which one. I tried to think like David. Where would he hide something important? I ran my fingers along the underside of the desk and found what I was looking for, a small key taped beneath the workspace. David had always been meticulous about backups. The key fit the third drawer. Inside was a leather-bound journal, just as Emma had described. I grabbed it along with a USB drive labeled insurance that was beside it. Whatever evidence David had collected, I wanted it all. As I was closing the drawer, I heard a sound that made my blood freeze. A car pulling into the driveway. Headlights swept across the window blinds. Rebecca was home early. I froze as the car door slammed outside. Rebecca wasn't supposed to be home yet. I clutched the journal and USB drive to my chest, heart pounding. I had seconds to decide. The front door wasn't an option. Rebecca would see me immediately. I closed the desk drawer and moved to the small bathroom attached to the office. Just as I pulled the door nearly shut, leaving a thin crack, I heard Rebecca enter. She wasn't alone. A male voice accompanied her, unfamiliar, with a slight accent. "You're sure the children won't be back until 8?" the man asked. "Positive," Rebecca replied. "My mother-in-law thinks I'm at yoga, and the sitter thinks I'm running errands. We have the house to ourselves." My stomach clenched. Another affair, so soon after David's death. Through the crack, I watched Rebecca lead the man into the office. He was tall, with salt and pepper hair. Let me get those papers for you, Rebecca said, moving toward the desk. Then we can talk about our arrangement more comfortably. The man smiled. When you called about selling the life insurance policy, I never expected such an attractive client. Rebecca laughed. Insurance brokers aren't usually so handsome either, Michael. She opened a desk drawer and withdrew a folder. Here's everything: the policy information, David's death certificate, the beneficiary paperwork. Michael scanned. The documents. $2 million is substantial. And you're sure the children are provided for elsewhere? David's investment portfolio is in a trust for them, Rebecca said dismissively. They'll be fine. I need this money for our fresh start. In Arizona, Michael said. Away from painful memories. Rebecca's expression hardened. Away from my meddling mother-in-law. She's becoming a problem. I've managed to discredit her locally, but she's persistent. The calculated cruelty in her voice made me grip the journal tighter. She wasn't mourning David or protecting the children. She was eliminating obstacles to her freedom, funded by my son's death. Michael set the folder down. Everything seems in order. I can have the paperwork processed next week, funds transferred within 30 days, just in time for your move. Perfect, Rebecca purred, stepping closer. Now, about that more comfortable discussion. I couldn't watch anymore. I retreated further into the bathroom, my mind racing. Rebecca was selling off David's insurance policy to fund her escape. I needed to get out. Through the door, I heard their voices move to the living room. After several minutes, I crept out. I remembered the office window didn't latch properly. I carefully unlocked it, squeezed through with the journal and USB drive secure in my jacket, and closed it behind me. Once in Helen's car, I finally breathed. Drive, I whispered, quickly. That night, I read David's journal. The entries spanned the 6 months before his death, detailing Rebecca's renewed infidelity, his consultations with a divorce attorney, and his determination to protect Emma and Liam. The final entry chilled me. Rebecca found out about the lawyer. Huge fight. She threatened to take the kids where I'll never find them if I file for divorce. Said she'd rather see me dead than let me have custody. Meeting with Peter tomorrow to expedite everything. The USB drive contained photos, recorded, conversations and financial records, evidence for the divorce and custody battle David never fought. I formed a plan. This time, I wouldn't confront Rebecca directly. I wouldn't give her a chance to spin more lies. First, I called James for his testimony. Next, I contacted David's attorney, Peter Callahan. He was visibly shaken by the journal entries. This changes everything, he said. With these records, James's testimony, and what you witnessed, we have grounds not just for grandparent visitation, but potentially for a custody review. I don't want to take the children from their mother, I clarified. I just want to ensure they're protected, financially and emotionally. 2 days later, I walked into family court with Peter, James, Pastor Robert, and several community members. Rebecca looked confident until she saw our group and the journal in my hand. The judge ordered a temporary hold on insurance payouts and prohibited Rebecca from leaving the state with the children pending a full hearing. As we left, Rebecca grabbed my arm. You had no right, she hissed. Those are my children. They're David's children too, I said quietly. And he wanted them protected. I'll fight you with everything I have. I know you will, I replied. But unlike you, I'm not fighting to win. I'm fighting for Emma and Liam. The weeks that followed were difficult. The court appointed a guardian for the children and ordered a thorough investigation. My alleged mental health issues were quickly dismissed, while Rebecca's financial maneuvers came under scrutiny. 3 months later, we reached a settlement. Rebecca retained primary custody, but I received substantial visitation rights protected by court order. The insurance money would be placed in trust for the children, with Rebecca receiving a modest allowance. Most importantly, she couldn't relocate without court approval. The first weekend the children stayed with me was bittersweet. They were cautious, confused by the conflict. Mom said you were sick, Emma said hesitantly, but then she said you weren't anymore. I was never sick, sweetheart, I told her gently. Sometimes grown-ups disagree and it gets complicated. Are you and Mom fighting because of Dad? Liam asked, his small face serious. In a way, I admitted. We both loved your dad very much. But we both love you and Emma more than anything. Slowly, we rebuilt our relationship. I kept my promises. I never spoke ill of Rebecca to the children, never revealed the full truth about her betrayals. That burden wasn't for them to carry. A year after David's death, I stood with Emma and Liam at his grave, placing fresh lilies against the headstone. "Do you think Dad can see us?" Emma asked, taking my hand. "I think he knows we're here," I said. "And I think he's very proud of both of you." As we walked back, I spotted Rebecca waiting at a distance. Our eyes met briefly, an unspoken acknowledgement passing between us. We would never be friends. But for Emma and Liam's sake, we had found a way to coexist. I had learned something powerful. Sometimes the greatest act of love isn't fighting to win, but fighting to create peace. I couldn't bring David back or erase Rebecca's betrayals, but I could ensure his children grew up surrounded by love, truth, and stability. That evening, as I tucked Liam into bed, he asked, "Can we stay here?" "Forever, Grandma?" "Not forever," I said, smoothing his hair. "But as long as you want, I'll be right here." I had lost my son, but I had found my voice. And in doing so, I had preserved our family's most important bonds, not defined by law or blood, but built on love, truth, and the courage to stand up for what matters most.